Well, it's been a few days and the leaders are out there. The campaigns are roaring. But are you paying attention yet, Canada? Hello, I'm Adrienne Batra. With me are Brian Lilley and Lorrie Goldstein. Okay, Brian, we've had campaign commitments. There are promises. The leaders are crisscrossing the country. Let's talk a little about, first off, how the leaders have been performing on the campaign trail. One very experienced politician, another inexperienced, I don't even know, politician, if we can call Mark Carney that, and another leader of the NDP where most people aren't really paying attention.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem for Jagmeet Singh. He's trying to find relevance even after Donald Trump announced the auto tariffs on Wednesday. He was jumping out in front of a camera right away trying to find relevance. But the sad part is for the NDP, folks aren't paying attention to him. And if they are, they're saying, oh, I think I'll go vote for Mark Carney and the Liberals instead. It's kind of a weird campaign. The polls have shown the Liberals growing over the last little while, but objectively, Pierre Poilievre has been running the better campaign in terms of being on message, being jovial, being positive, putting out very good policy each day. Mark Carney it's been an odd campaign. So while Poilievre has been going into the GTA in areas that the Conservatives don't hold, he went to Quebec City, an area they normally do pretty well, and now he's off to the BC Lower Mainland. He's playing an offensive game. The Carney Liberals have been playing very defensive. They first went to St. John's, Newfoundland. Then they went to Gander. Then Halifax. Then Windsor. They were in areas that they already hold or they're expected to do very well in, regardless of how the final outcome is. I mean, Atlantic Canada is going to go very Liberal. And he has not had clear messaging. There was one day, I think it was Monday, I watched his message of the day announcement, watched the whole thing, and I got to the end and I thought, he talked about a lot of different things, but there was no clear message. And at various times, he's also been snippy, condescending with journalists.
Lorrie, we know that the polls were roaring for the Conservatives before Justin Trudeau quit, and then the Trump factor comes in. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into that. But I'm wondering, from the Conservatives' perspective, they're still talking about the things that matter to Canadians, the affordability issues, the housing crisis, the high taxes. Do you see um, some of this messaging from the Conservatives? The Liberals seem to be taking some of that and putting that out there as their own. So, stealing Conservative ideas to make it Liberal plans.
It's nothing new. The Liberals steal other ideas from the parties in elections and then ignore what they promised. But I think that, look, I think the most significant factor politically is what Brian identified first off. The NDP vote is collapsing, according to these polls. They're into single digits. Given these current polls, they might not even make official party status if it holds until. So that's boosting up Liberal support. Most of the polls show either that the Liberals and Conservatives are dead heat or the Liberals are ahead. Of course, even if they're in dead heat, that's the advantage to the Liberals because their vote's more efficient than the Conservative vote. Having said that, though, I think Carney's, they're running a front-runners campaign, I think, and they're scared. Like, you don't agree to go on the largest French language network in Quebec, TVA, for a debate? This from the party that has always said that the leader of the Liberals must be fluently bilingual, has attacked the Conservatives when in their judgment the Conservative lead and mocked the Conservative leader when they said, you don't have a bilingual candidate. And I agree, they're cocooning him. And you cocoon him for a reason. You cocoon him because you're concerned about what he will say in unprompted situations. And in terms of an example of, I'm sorry, but Eastern Canadian liberal media bias, Brian, he's been very snippy with the media. I haven't seen a lot of stories in most of the mainstream media about that when for over a year they attacked Carney for being snippy. Poilievre, sorry. They attacked Poilievre for being snippy. Like to me, these double standards are so apparent. And I think it's like the people doing it, they're like fish in the water. They don't know they're in the water. And of course, that will help the Liberals and Carney. And so, look, I think, it's the first week. We have a month to go. Anything can happen. Nobody has sort of hit themselves with a garden rake yet. Like one of those things. But to me, it's competitive. And as for the Conservatives, to me, you don't change you got to tell people what you believe and who you are. If you try to do something else, voters will spot it. All of those issues that we're talking about in terms of what the economy was like prior to the election, Mark Carney said in the Liberal leadership debate on February 25th, they were talking about the strength of the economy. And he went, I'd just like to say something about the strength of the economy. And what he said was by over bringing in immigration and by overspending, he said, we were in bad shape before the tariffs. That's what he says in the Liberal leadership race. Last week, he said, oh no, it was all Carney and the tariffs. So to me, you point out those discrepancies, point out those issues. But as I say, we got a month to go. It's only been a week. It seems like a year, and we'll see what happens.
Brian, I want to sort of pick up a little bit more. We saw Pierre Poilievre earlier this week out with an announcement with a massive turnout for at his rally, perhaps in areas where Conservatives never had that much support before. We're showing some video of that here, and then juxtaposing that again with Mark Carney, who isn't used to having to answer questions from the media. I get the impression, and I feel that this is in part why his team is bubble wrapping him. They're running like a 2020 Joe Biden campaign from the basement. They don't really want him out there, maybe one or two questions at an event. But I want to show this, like it feels like he's got a almost disdain for being questioned. Let's just have a look at this.
Specifically, as we throw this clip, most of these are female reporters that he's dealing with. Doesn't quite talk the same way to the male reporters. Here it is.
Look inside yourself, Rosemary.
OK, tout. Ça suffit, hein?
I wonder if people care. I wonder, us in the media have such a low, people have a low opinion of us in the media already. I don't know if people really care about that, but it's less about the talking to the media. It's more about, you say you are what you want to be out there for Canadians. Do you know Canadians? Are you talking to them? Are you just standing there for a photo op?
On that point of does he know Canada and Canadians, he got the name of École Polytechnique wrong. He was talking about one of his own candidates and got her name wrong, Natalie Provost. And he mispronounced her name and then said she was a survivor of the massacre at Concordia. No, it was École Polytechnique, a very different school in a different part of Montreal. And part of why that may have happened is that Mark Carney left for Harvard in the mid-1980s. He graduated in 88 or 89. The Montreal Massacre was December 6, 1989. Any of us that were in the country of, old enough to know what was happening, know where we were when we heard about it. Carney did not. So he doesn't know Canadians. And then, that one clip of him telling a reporter, I believe from Radio Canada, CBC's French arm the other day, she was just asking him, are you going to talk to Donald Trump? She wasn't berating him. It wasn't a nasty question. This is just after the tariff announcement. And he's like, ça suffit. That's enough. Excuse me? What? Who are you dictating to? The guy was bank governor. And let me tell you, because I used to cover Mark Carney when he was bank governor during the financial crisis, a bunch of us who were political reporters had to go out and now cover the bank governor, which normally, you don't pay attention to that. Leave that to the financial guys. The financial guys, very deferential. It's a very different relationship. The bank governor just tells you what he needs to tell you and answers a couple of very nice, polite questions and goes away. It's not the free-for-all. It's not the bare-bone scrum that the political guys have. And he's not used to this. There is a long time left in the election. And if Donald Trump stops throwing tariff bombs into the middle of it, and Canadians see who Mark Carney is, they see that I think he's going to be destroyed in the debate, although those are pretty late. As Lorrie said, it's competitive. Things could change. But there is this attempt not only to keep him from the media, but for many in the media to assist in bubble wrapping Carney, to not ask the tough questions. He was asked a few about Brookfield the other day and the tax havens, but do you know that this is a guy who has been photographed with Ghislaine Maxwell, who's Jeffrey Epstein's madam, and partied with Prince Andrew, and we know all the claims and rumors about Prince Andrew and Epstein, the lawsuits that have been launched against him. He's never been asked about that. Can you imagine a Pierre Poilievre hanging out with Ghislaine Maxwell and Prince Andrew and nobody saying, hey, wait a minute, what are you talking about here? I'm the only person in the mainstream media to have put that question to the Carney campaign. He did not address it directly. It was through an unnamed spokesperson who would only speak on background. And look, fine, you can believe his answer, but he should be asked about it and be on the record about it. Because if that was Pierre Poilievre, even after he answered it, they would dog him day after day. Carney is the most unvetted candidate for prime minister we've ever had, and too many in the media that are covering him aren't interested in asking tough questions.
Okay, Lorrie, let's now shift to that. Maybe not Carney and Pierre Poilievre aren't really necessarily fighting each other, but it's this fight that they have going on with the United States. US President Donald Trump announced the 25% tariffs on auto manufacturing and auto parts. And my question is, did that move potentially just hand the election over to the Liberals?
It's possible. The more that this is solely about Trump and the tariffs, the less energy you have for any other issue. But having said that, what's important is, okay, what are you going to do? The concern I have about this right now is that Carney is all about, he has said, look, we can't fight the U.S. dollar for dollar on tariffs. And any reasonable person knows that if this becomes an all-out war, over time, Canada loses. It's a great thing that we're all being patriotic, and I'm not mocking that. It's a great thing that people, including me, are going to the supermarket and looking for the Canadian flags. But in the real world, that doesn't move the needle. And so the concern I have is, okay, this is getting worse. The auto thing is huge. I mean, if this comes 25% in addition to the 4 or 5 other tariffs, one after the other in early April, now you're talking about the horror scenario of hundreds of thousands of auto workers in both Canada and the United States being laid off within days, because of the supply chains. And just opposed to that, to me, was the attack on Daniel Smith, the Alberta Premier, for going on a Breitbart podcast and asking Trump to, okay, can you just put this on pause until we get through the election? Totally legitimate request. I'm sure the Liberals would make it. And then added, because what's going on right now will hurt the Conservatives. And now she's being accused of treason. And it's like, yeah, but she's the only one talking about an off-ramp to this. Like, we're heading for a brick wall at 100 miles an hour. Yes, the Americans will suffer, but we will suffer much more because their economy is 10 times bigger than us. And so what I want to hear from the leaders is, okay, Trump bad, Orange Man bad, tariffs bad. Yeah, we're going to fight. But what's the off-ramp? Because the off-ramp isn't doing election ads with Mike Myers. Gets us nowhere. And so that's my concern. Whoever this benefits, and the conventional wisdom is the more Trump threatens us, the better it is for Carney. Fine. But there's a bigger issue at here. How is this thing going to end up? Where is Canada going to be 3 months, 6 months, a year from now? Because if we have a continuing trade war, of escalating tariffs, our economy, I won't use the word that makes it, will be very bad. And so to me, it's again this thing like an election's no time to discuss serious issues. Nobody's talking about that. Okay, what are we going to do? We're all mad. We're gonna impose counter tariffs. Buy Canadian in the supermarket. Great, but this is still coming. What are we going to do?
Yeah, and then what? Well, Brian, there's no question. This is arguably the most consequential election of a generation that we're going through right now at a very critical time. Our economy is not strong. Our affordability crisis remains, and I think that, and then the ongoing looming threat of tariffs is absolutely there. But when you look at the public opinion polling, they're for Canadians, their number one motivating factor is not necessarily Donald Trump and that threat. It's their own pocketbook. It's their own affordability. I mean, you can, depending on the polls, sure, but their own affordability issues remain number one. And so, how does all this, with the singularly focused on Trump's tariffs, change the calculus in this election?
Well, it's tough for the Conservatives, but I think they're going to have to thread a needle on this one. For people who view the number one issue as Donald Trump and the tariffs, which tend to be, not exclusively, but tend to be voters 55 plus, 60 plus, they're the ones who have been moving to the Liberals. Younger voters have been putting their top issue as housing affordability, the economy, inflation. They're sticking, for the most part, with the Conservatives. For Poilievre and the Conservatives to win this, they need to start talking about Trump more, perhaps, start talking about the tariff threat more, perhaps, and maybe relate it back to their policy. They've been putting some very good policy in the window, and then Donald Trump shows up and sucks up all the oxygen. So, but, once we deal with Trump, the fact is crime's still going to be rampant, and the Liberals are not going to fix that. The housing affordability crisis is still going to be there. They created it, and they're not going to fix it. They've had 2 years of warnings and haven't done anything except drive housing prices up further still. Immigration is still going to be a problem. So maybe what they have to start doing is talking about Trump and then relating it back to the problems the country faces, and that you've got to solve those to make the country stronger in the face of these Trump threats. But right now, the Liberal message of Canada strong and protect Canada seems to be working. There's essentially stealing Doug Ford's Ontario election playbook, and it worked very well for him. You can win every seat in Alberta if you want, but if you're not winning enough in Ontario, you're not forming government. And that's where the Conservatives are losing voters right now.
Well, it's one of the shortest federal elections Canada is going to have, but there's still some racetrack left. Who knows what the next issue will be to upend the campaigns? Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please comment to us in the comments below, and go to the TorontoSun.com. You're going to find commentary and coverage there you will not find anywhere else.